Hello, welcome to Miss Flores' virtual classroom. Today I'll be doing our social studies lesson. Today is Monday, November 9th. Happy Monday! I am super excited for our social studies lesson today. So let's get started. Now, remember, you can access Studies Weekly by going on your Clever page. This is my Clever page. Yours might look a little different. You'll find the pink icon that says Studies Weekly. You'll click on it and it will take you to Studies Weekly. Once you get on Studies Weekly, we are on week 13, maps. I love learning about maps. Let's check out our standards before we start. The standards we're going to be covering today is 2.15a. Gather information about a topic using a variety of valid oral and visual sources, such as maps. We're going to be looking at maps, we're going to be looking at pictures, and we're going to be gathering information, learning things about our maps and the pictures we're looking at. We'll also be doing 2.15b. right, in which we're going to be interpreting oral, visual, and print material. This means that we're going to be looking at pictures, we're going to be looking at maps, and then we're going to be thinking about the main ideas, making predictions, and comparing and contrasting with ideas that we already have. We'll also be doing 2.16d, where we're going to be using social studies terminology. We're going to be using social studies words to describe what we're seeing. We might be using maps. You might be hearing words like compass rose, cardinal directions, relative location. Those are examples of words you might hear that are social studies terminologies, right? They're words that we use when we are talking about social studies. 2.16e, express ideas orally based on knowledge and experiences. You might hear me talk about my own experiences with maps. I might ask you, my students, to take one moment and think about the cool things you already know about maps. We'll also be doing 2.16f, right? We're going to be using maps to create written visual materials such as stories, maps, and graphic organizers to express ideas, right? So today we're not going to be making maps, but we are going to be looking at maps and reading maps and discussing how would we make our own maps. So let's go ahead and get started. Remember, if you're on Clever, you can have it read it to you, or you can read it out loud by yourselves. Miss Flores is going to read it so that way I can pause and talk about the important things. Maps. Maps tell people where places are located and how to get there. But some maps do much more. Maps can tell us about the earth, the height of the mountains, the depth of the oceans. Maps can tell us about people, where they live, and how they change their communities, right? So let's take a moment, let's pause and think about what we just read. Maps can tell us about the earth. Right? On some maps, you'll see tall mountains, and some maps show us elevation, which tells us how tall the mountains are. It also tells us the depth of the ocean. It might tell us how deep down the ocean is. Let's go ahead and pause and watch a video about maps. Whoops. Sorry about that, Hans.
Did you know that there are many different types of maps? Some are really big and show things like the planet Jupiter, while others are small enough to only show a single city block. We can learn all sorts of things from maps. Some maps are topographical, which means they show us what areas of the world are like, how tall the mountains are, where there are rivers, and more. Other maps are political and show where the borders of different nations and cities are. There are also maps that lead you from place to place by showing you where the roads lead. The right map will open the world for you. You might be wondering what's different from a map and a photograph. A map must be drawn by someone called a cartographer. They decide what type of map it's going to be, where it's going to show, and how it looks. It's a really important job to have, and cartography has been around for thousands of years. How many different types of maps have you seen?
To learn about all those different kinds of maps? What are some maps that you have seen before? You might say, I made a map in first grade. Or you might say, I've seen a map of the world before. If you remember back to our IRAs from the very first 6 weeks, we looked at different maps of the entire world and talked about the different stories that we read and where they were from. So we've looked at maps before. You can see maps of our state, which is Texas. You can see a map of our country in all its states, which is the United States. Or you can see a map of the world, of the entire earth and all the continents that are there. That is so cool. Let's keep learning about maps. Whoops. All right, let's go ahead and just go, I think. Oh, there's a world map. This is the map I was talking about. You can see the entire world. There's North America. That's where we live, right? There's South America. There's Africa. There is Europe. And there's Asia. And then there's Australia. And we see Antarctica at the very bottom, right? This is a map of the entire world. All right, let's keep reading. That was super cool. All right, parts of a map. Let's learn about the parts of a map and how we can read a map. A map key explains the symbols on a map. Legend is another name for a map key. Many maps have coordinates. Coordinates are numbers or letters or both along the margins of a map. Coordinates help you find places on a map, right? So the coordinates they're talking about are these numbers on the side or their letters. So just like in the article, it could be numbers and letters. All right, so we see letters on the bottom and we see numbers on the side. And then when you're trying to find a place on the map, you're going to look at the numbers from one side and then see where it overlaps with a letter on the bottom. Right? You might also see legends. Legends tell us what is on the map. It tells us the keys on the map, right? So it's going to have a title, right? So this map is a map of Switzerland. It's going to tell us the symbols, right? If we see a little star, we know it's a national capital. If we see a line that has little lines on it like this, we know it's a railroad. It also gives us a scale. A scale will tell us what each little part on the map means and how far it is, right? So we can see that this scale is like 2 inches and every inch is like 20 miles. So could you show 20 miles on a map? You couldn't put literally 20 miles on a map, but you can show it with a scale. So every inch is going to count as 20 miles. All right, let's look at, this is another legend that you could see, right? So all the blue lines might mean freeways. That's like highways like I-35. You might see a red line, which is where you want to go. A route of interest. All right, let's go ahead and go back. Map symbols. We're still reading about map symbols. These are map symbols. A picnic table shows where a picnic area is located. A tent stands for a campground. Capital cities are marked with a star in a circle. The symbol that has a number in it is the sign for a U.S. highway. So you can use symbols or the map key to tell you where something is, right? So we know that when we're looking at the map, if we see a little fire, we know that there's a campfire there, right? What's another symbol that you can see? You may have said gas station. Let's look at the symbol for gas station. It looks like a little gas pump. Can you count how many gas stations we can see on our map with me? 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 gas stations on this map. How did I know there were 4? I could see on the map key that that's what that symbol means, a gas station, and then I counted how many symbols I had. All right. The last thing we're going to go over is relative location. Relative location. One way to describe where a place is located is by saying it is close to a familiar area. For example, you might say the library is across the street from the park. When you describe the location of a place, you are giving its relative location. Right? You might say that our library, our public library in Coppers Cove, it is right next to the fire station. That is a relative location because it's telling me where one place is compared to another place. You might say that our school, Clements Parson, is next to a neighborhood. You have to drive through a neighborhood to get to our school at Clement Parsons, right? That's a relative location because you're telling me where something else is in relation to where this is. You're comparing them, so I have an idea of where it is. That's all we're going to talk about for maps today. Thank you so much, students, for listening. You guys did great. I can't wait to learn more about maps tomorrow with you. Have a great Monday.